I have a minor obsession with Sega arcade games, more specifically, racing games from the Model 2, Model 3 and Naomi generation. So in today's video, I want to talk about some of these favourite Sega arcade racing games of mine, as well as looking at their home ports and some technical history. So without further ado, let's get into it. First, let's talk about the most important hardware for me, the CRT. This is the Samsung CW21A113V, a 21-inch flat panel CRT from the early to mid 2000s. When I was young, my parents actually had a very similar TV. It even had the same startup chime and a loud thunk afterwards from a degaussing. Mine, however, wasn't as fancy because it didn't have the headphone jack. The hole was there, but it was filled in with plastic. But yeah, this TV has both AV and RGB SCUD input for either flexibility or for a better image, respectively. The colours from this TV are extremely vibrant, and the TV is very bright and still has a lot of life left in it. No burning either, just a little scratch on the panel is all. The speakers are just how I remember them being on CRTs. The bass is so boomy and yet so hollow. There is no clarity in audio whatsoever on the default settings. Yes, you could turn everything down and get a more balanced sound, but what's the fun in that? This is all supposed to be for nostalgia after all. I've wanted to own a CRT since I was 12 years old, so once again, thank you Leo for donating it to me. I'll be using it for any games that otherwise I haven't been able to upscale for this video. OutRun 2 was my favourite arcade game as a kid. For the 2 people watching this video who have never seen OutRun, the premise is simple. You have 5 courses to complete before the timer runs out. Any crashes or poor turns will result in you reaching for another quid in your pocket. You have some of the hottest Ferrari cars to choose from, and you get to pick one of the many iconic music tracks for the duration of the playthrough. The controls are incredibly tight and satisfying. They're ones that you have to learn to master, and once you do, you're going to be constantly drifting. Because you are in control of which courses you pick at the end of each stage, there's a great amount of replayability too. Each playthrough can be slightly different, or heck, the same, if you want to master your time. Every day out at the seaside, I would look inside the arcade just to see if they have an OutRun machine. The most impressive OutRun 2 machine I've played was the SBDX cabinet in some seaside town up north. That cabinet ran on Sega's Lindbergh machine, basically a Pentium 4 PC with a PS3-like Nvidia GPU, although the one I played had a dying GPU, which was extremely sad to see. There are a few versions of OutRun 2, in terms of both arcade releases and home releases. The arcade version of OutRun 2 runs on the Sega Hero board, which is essentially a modified original Xbox. Well, technically the development kit board, with the extra RAM and all the chipset. This meant that it was easy for Sumo Digital to port over the game to the original Xbox in 2004, 1 year after the release in the arcades. As well as the arcade's OutRun and Heart Attack mode, which has you doing challenges for your girlfriend, such as drifting or avoiding traffic, and getting graded on your performance, a mission mode was also added in the Xbox port that allows you to unlock extra cars, music, and tracks, which I will touch on at the end of this video. There is also a time trial mode too. Also in 2004, an update to OutRun 2 was released to the arcades, named OutRun 2 SP. While the original game featured European-inspired tracks, SP goes for a New World American approach to the courses. These tracks were later ported to OutRun 2006 Coast to Coast, over on PC, original Xbox, PS2 and PSP. I played the crap out of OutRun 2006 over on the PS2 when I was younger, just playing the standard arcade mode. There was also a PS3 and Xbox Live exclusive title named OutRun Online Arcade. This version stripped out any of the missions and instead focused entirely on the arcade game modes and on its new multiplayer mode. It was technically the highest resolution OutRun 2 title, being the first arcade and home version of the game to run in high definition, as well as also having updated graphical effects like bloom, because in 2009 everything needed bloom. By the way, something I adore with a lot of Sega's titles, and especially OutRun 2, is the use of photorealistic textures. I have spoken about my love for this style of graphics in the past, so the only thing I'll say here is that playing on a CRT, the jankiness really does go away. The natural blur of the display really helps to make the game look more real, as opposed to just pictures wrapped around 3D models. Sadly, Online Arcade got delisted just after a year and 6 months on PS3, and 3 months after that on Xbox, due to the Ferrari license expiring. Sega Rally 2 is another game that I have memories of, though I wouldn't necessarily call them fond memories. When I was on holiday with my parents to Salou, the hotel I stayed at had a Sega Rally 2 arcade machine. Every time we went down to the lobby, I would ask for change to play it. I remember that my last playthrough before we left, I finally managed to get to the second stage. I remember how intense that felt with the Euro Fight music on in the background, which was both incredibly anxiety-inducing and motivating. Ultimately, I ran out of time just before the checkpoint. How things don't change. Game over, yeah! No, seriously, this game is really quite difficult. I've never managed to complete the third stage, even with 11 years more of video game experience. The game is quite fun though. The controls are quite loose, and you will fall into a drift when taking turns, which does feel really nice. It feels like you are gliding on the track. all while the force feedback is giving you a nice representation of the ground below you. There are opponents on the road that you need to overtake, and you need to beat the stages with plenty of time remaining, otherwise you will find yourself not having enough time for the later stages. There is a practice mode that has a time trial like gameplay, trying to get the best time on the stage, but this game is a coin swallower. But it is fun, and you never feel like the game is cheap. Instead, you know it's your skills that you need to work on. There are 4 courses that you have to master, all on different terrain. Look, there's nothing I can say about Crazy Taxi that hasn't been said many times before on this website. In fact, LGR has a great retrospective on the game. It's one of those timeless arcade games that are quite easy to find. Maybe not so much at seaside arcades, but certainly at arcade bars and at retro game venues, like the fantastic Arcade Club in the UK. So all I will say is, I've spent years, on and off, trying to get the highest score in this game. Now, something you need to know about the difficulty of arcade games is that they can be modified by the venue. So Arcade Club, that has free play on all the machines, has the machines either set on easy or medium, I haven't asked personally, while places that charge can put their machines up to hard difficulty. So there's always that added challenge of not knowing what difficulty the machine is set to. But it is still fun kicking my friend's ass at this game. Alright, I'm getting a bit too cocky here, my bad. I just love Crazy Taxi, man. The awesome music from The Offspring and Bad Religion, the real life shops that are in this game, and the fact that this is a game that you legitimately need to master. And I don't just mean the controls, those are relatively easy, but I mean you have to memorize the world's layout, and take the most efficient routes. There are strategy guides showing all of the shortcuts, both official and glitched ones, that I myself had no clue about. I haven't even mastered the Crazy Drift yet. It's a game, like OutRun 2, that I can play over and over again, and not get bored of it. It is genuinely one of the top tier games in terms of its gameplay core. Nowadays, games are filled with pointless side quests and grinding mechanics to artificially increase playtime. Crazy Taxi shows how a simple game, with no DLC, no season drops of new maps, etc., can still be replayable. Sega Race TV is a game that isn't really talked about too much on the internet, and I think it's due to its obscurity. I've never come across it in person, not even Arcade Club has it, and there was never a home port of this game. This game was produced by the legend himself, Yu Suzuki. Okay, cool, but what is this game actually about then? Well, as the name suggests, Sega Race TV is a fictionally broadcasted event, hosted by the most American man to ever exist, Jake Patterson. The game is incredibly flamboyant in its presentation, with the intro sequence being a cheesy disco song, all while Jake is throwing his best moves out there. Jake also joins in the race, while his brother Mike joins the responsibility in hosting. The game involves clearing 3 courses. If you do so, you'll unlock extra parts for your car via a special password. In terms of cars, we have a solid variety here, from JDM to Old American Muscle, to then modern American machines like the Mustang GT. And we have an RAF here too, which actually does control the best in my opinion, as each car does have its own characteristics. The Arcade Spider, for example, drifts easier than a car with high grip, and while it does not have the best acceleration, you do start each race with a boost. You also get to pick your character, which in turn also changes the colour of the car and the voice lines. I have to give the game props for its damage model too. Normally, licensed cars don't get as thinged up as they do in this game. This game can be roughly equated to that of Split Second, in the sense that it was also a televised game show, and had dynamic obstacles that had to be avoided. Well, here the obstacles are always the same, but they do keep the game fresh from lap to lap. Second lap in Jake's world, for example, has large trucks that block the road, while another map has a road made out of ice open on the second lap. Each third lap has a boost bonus, where you get unlimited boost up until the last stretch of the map, which becomes very intense, and has caused me to lose quite a few times, all while a constant commentary is happening on what's happening on the road and on what is up ahead. I'll be honest, I spent about 3 times as long playing this game for this review than all the others. It doesn't have the best looking tracks out there, but the gameplay is really fun, and the difficulty is just perfect. You want to win every race, but you'll get really close, so you have to put in that metaphorical coin into the system to try again. 18-wheeler American Pro Trucker is another Yu Suzuki game. I could end this segment here, to be honest. Nah, but seriously, this is another game that I've played at the Arcade Club. I've never played it before, and I kinda fell in love with it as well. The premise is this: you are a newbie truck driver, and you have to deliver the cargo. However, the task is not easy, as a rival trucker named Lizardtail is on your back. He'll ram you off the road, he'll damage your cargo, he'll do whatever it takes for him to deliver before you do. Speaking of cargo, you can pick the cargo that makes more money, but is heavier for a better high score, at the expense of difficulty. And this game is difficult. I couldn't beat the emulated Naomi version of this game, even when I turned down the difficulty in the service menu, so I had to resort to the Dreamcast part of the game. You have multiple routes that you can take throughout the game, but unknowingly, one route will be slower than the other, whether that's due to inclines or due to tight turns that kill your speed, so you have to be careful. With multiple playthroughs, you will memorize which routes are the best. If you do lose your speed, Any truck on the map will give you a slipstream speed bonus, which alongside the time bonus vans are essential to finishing the course on time. You can also use your horn to make other cars move out of your way. If you do get ahead of your rival, who by the way keeps tormenting you on the CB radio, you get a bonus stage to earn more money by having to park your truck without hitting anything. Like Crazy Taxi, Sega has opted to add real-life companies to the game. I think most people agree with me that in-game advertising, when done in this way, is actually a decent idea. It makes the world feel realistic, and it's amusing to be driving by a Denny's or a Texaco. In the game, you start in New York and travel to Key West, St. Petersburg, Dallas, Las Vegas, and finish in San Francisco. The courses are short, so is this whole game really, but there is a nice variety in how each city looks, with changing weather conditions and time of day. Daytona USA is an arcade classic, but I feel like the second version isn't spoken about as much. Released on Sega's Model 3, an iconic arcade board alongside Naomi, features some of my favourite graphics from Sega's arcade games. It's pure photorealism, all over. The games are all very bright and very well detailed for 1996 hardware. In fact, the Model 3 was the last fully custom made board that Sega had produced. As with the Naomi, Dreamcast hardware was used for the board. Chikiro used Xbox hardware, Triforce used GameCube hardware, and afterwards, custom-built PCs were used in the arcades from Sega. All of this was to save money in order to sell more units, which actually wasn't a bad shout. Though expensive custom hardware allowed for graphics that were completely out of reach at home. Seriously, looking at this game with a 2024 mindset really doesn't do the game justice. Daytona USA 2 begins with a badass attract mode, with a rock song sung by Dennis St. James. The game shows that it's not messing around, with tight turns, fancy camera work, and spectacular crashes. Like the original, there are 3 maps that you can choose from, with the first being a racetrack, the second being an amusement park theme, and the third taking place in New York City. And just like in the original game, the amount of laps decreases due to the length of the tracks. But we are missing some iconic parts of the original game, like Mitsuyoshi's vocals, and the Hornet. How can the Hornet not be in the game? Well, don't worry, as the Hornet makes a return in the game's updated version, Daytona 2 Power Edition. Funnily enough, Battle on the Edge, the initial version of Daytona USA 2, had the car in a hidden specialist menu that was not discovered until some folks at the cutting room floor disassembled the game's code. And in the service menu of the Japanese version, we can also have Mitsuyoshi sing the songs instead. Great fan service from Sega. Power Edition also features a new attract screen, with more impressive animations, as well as some minor changes to the tracks and cars, like the removal of the dome around the racetrack, and a mix mode that has all of the tracks combined, which is really cool. Power Edition was also featured recently in Like a Dragon Gaiden, making it the first time the game has been ported over to home consoles. The game takes on the name Sega Racing Classic 2. This is in reference to Sega Racing Classic, which was a port of Daytona USA for arcades back in 2009. The port was later relicensed and released OutRun to the Xbox 360 and PS3, though it can no longer be purchased due to the Daytona license expiring, which is also the reason for the name change in Like a Dragon Gaiden. But this isn't the only way to play Daytona USA 2 tracks on console. As I alluded to before, OutRun 2 features an unlockable Daytona USA 2 race mode, which features the mix track, with some motorway breaks to change the lighting. I want to give an honorary mention to SCUD Race, which was the second game to be released on the Model 3. The game was developed by the same team as Daytona USA, and in fact does play quite similar to Daytona 1 and 2. Even the track design has a Daytona 2 type of feel to it. Speaking of which, the 4 tracks that are available include 2 city tracks, a Southeastern Asian inspired track, and a European inspired track, most likely Italy. Just like Daytona 2, a home port of this game had never been produced, outside of tracks in OutRun 2, though the first development hardware for the Dreamcast included a development kit with a bunch of tech demos for the developers to get a feel for the hardware and the features. One of these tech demos was actually a SCUD track, showing off the power of arcade hardware inside a home console. Sadly, this tech demo never became a full game. Wow, I was not expecting this video to be as long as it is, but I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Let me know what your favourite arcade games are, and maybe I'll check them out, who knows. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you for the next video.